Hi, I'm Kristen Nolan, speculative and crime fiction editor. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Today we're going to talk about trusting your readers. It's important that you trust them and that they build their trust in you. The relationship between authors and readers is built on mutual trust. The reader trusts you, the author, will give them enough information to follow the storyline and clearly picture settings while being entertained and shocked with plot twists and reveals. As the author, you must trust your reader to fill in the blanks and come to their own sound conclusions. By blanks, I mean not clothing or setting described every last detail. When there's too much information given to the reader, they can feel untrusted, possibly even think that the author's not giving them too much credit. Giving the reader too much information is what I call author-splaining. It means that most authors will go through and describe absolutely everything that's in a room, everything that the characters are feeling, the whys behind what they're doing. It can all be too much, and the reader's not felt trusted to come to their own conclusions. And you're also not trusting yourself, because you may write, dialogue so well that the reader gets it, especially from maybe their personality shown beforehand. So they already know if something's sarcastic, or they already know why the character's saying something. So in order to trust your reader, you need to be realistic about your author, I'm sorry, you need to be realistic about your audience's prior knowledge. Now, you might say, oh, I don't know what my reader already knows, but you kind of do based on your audience. Make sure your reader is given what they should remember about the setting, the storyline, and the characters. It's really that simple, but not. Um, it can be just like everything else, and you need to practice it. Practice holding back information, practice highlighting the information that your reader needs to know. Now let's get into how to do this, how to trust your reader and not author-splain. Your audience's prior knowledge. First, you must decide who your audience is. So ask yourself, who do you want to read the book? The answer is not everyone. Everyone tastes are different, so you're not going to be able to do that. Not everyone reads your genre, and not everyone will be in your target age group. If you're writing fantasy, your audience will be fans of fantasy. If you're writing a crime novel, your audience will probably be fans of crime novels. If your character is 16 years old, your target audience is YA, roughly people between 11 and 16 will read that book. If your main character is 45, then your target audience is adults, roughly people between 30 and 60. So let's look at a crime novel as an example. Chances are your audience will have read other crime novels or watched TV and movies in the same genre. They don't know your story yet, but they will know some things. Like if the police don't have a warrant, then anything they find in the suspect's home is inadmissible. If the perpetrator doesn't wipe down a weapon that they used and they weren't wearing gloves, they will leave a fingerprint or at least a partial one. Results like these don't necessarily need to be spelled out when the crime is being committed. Your audience will understand when the evidence is rejected or questioned later on. You don't need to point it out that not wearing gloves, it didn't leave a fingerprint right when the perpetrator discards the weapon. Not telling them these details actually builds suspense. The reader will want to know when the characters figure out the problem or when they will get caught by their errors. Until they are told the truth, the reader's going to speculate, and that's part of the fun. Guessing and thinking you can figure it out before the detective figures it out. That's all part of the suspense. So for setting, storyline, and characters, you're going to want to give your readers enough descriptions to help them easily picture what's around the characters, and a few details that are different or important to the storyline and the characters. Give a general setting description at first, then reveal the more important details. For example, the scene takes place in a garage. I bet by just saying garage, you already pictured one. Then you're going to mention that there is an SUV parked in one spot and a bunch of junk in the other spot. Let the reader in on a few items that tell them something about the people living in the house, and home in on the important items that the reader needs to know to remember the storyline. Let me read an example here. Henry pushed the door open. The SUV was parked in its usual place, and the pile of junk took up the other parking space. The bike hadn't been used in years and hung next to the tools he'd barely touched since they moved in. He spotted his daughter's plush rocking horse, lowered his head, and stepped back in the house. Now, the reader doesn't need to be told that the sight of the rocking horse caused him to forget why he went in the garage in the first place. They don't need to know why he didn't ride his bike in the years or hadn't touched the tools. The reader doesn't need to be told that the sight of the rocking horse caused him to forget why he went to the garage in the first place. They don't need to know why he didn't ride his bike in years or he hadn't touched the tools. The impression you're left with is, I'm going to leave that up to you. I don't need to tell you how to feel, but the rocking horse is the key to solving his daughter's case. Now I'm going to read an example with author-splaining. Henry pushed the door to the garage open. There was an SUV parked on one side and a pile of junk he'd collected over the years, including bike tools and a tire pump, odd holiday decorations, the stuff people usually forget about until they need them for some project. Henry hadn't used the bike in years. Both its tires were flat, the spokes were rusting, and one pedal was dangling from the side closest to him. He barely touched the bike since they'd moved in. What was it, 5 years ago? His daughter's plush rocking horse that she loved so much would sit on would sit on for hours watching TV, sat only 4 feet from the SUV, partially covered by an old sheet and leaning against a couple boxes put there 3 years prior. He thought about his daughter and how she went missing for 4 years and felt a deep sadness overwhelm him. With tears welling in his eyes, he forgot why he went into the garage in the first place. It couldn't have been that important anyway. He lowered his head and saw the small dent in the SUV's bumper that he got when he was at the grocery store yesterday. It wasn't his fault. He'd been lost in his thoughts and backed into a truck that was parked behind him. There was a scratch on the car, too, that happened when he was taking out the trash. The trash can was full and he lost control. It rolled past the SUV and put a scratch on it. He barely ever parked it outside. It seemed important at the time, but that was years ago, before his daughter disappeared. He stepped back in the house, deflated, defeated, because his daughter hadn't been found by the police other than keeping her case on file, stopped doing anything to actively help her. So all the same information was revealed in the second one that was in the first one, but there's a lot more detail. And what happens is the important things that the reader should be pulling out from that is lost in this bulk of information. You want to deliver the most succinct thing that you can while still being entertaining, and letting the reader in on the important things. The first version gave you basic setting and let you fill in the blanks. It gave you some details that hinted at character's personality, and his state of mind. It also hinted at what situation or problems needed to be solved. The missing information will be revealed later, possibly when Henry goes back in the house and talks to his wife, or posts something on the internet about his daughter, or calls the detective that was on the case. Parsing out information to your readers, what they need to know. It builds suspense. It creates questions in the reader's mind that you will eventually reveal the answers to. Not giving them every detail means you trust your reader to figure it out on their own, and you keep them interested until you actually do tell them the answers to their questions. Holding back is key to creating a story that your readers will love. So I want you to trust your reader and trust yourself. You're going to take them on an incredible journey. Just make sure that you are keeping in mind your audience and what they need to know. I hope you enjoyed this. Happy writing and revising. I'm Kristen Nolan, speculative fiction and crime fiction editor.